Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about flow state with my dear friend Genevieve Rudolph, or Genevieve, as you know her. So, in just a moment, she's going to be joining us, which is super exciting. All right, here, let's bring you on, Genevieve. Yes.
Hey!
Yay!
You did it!
Woo!
It's so good to see you.
You too. I missed
I
you.
miss you too.
I know. It's amazing how much you bond just like being in a shared space with somebody, right?
Totally.
I
How's
know.
California? You're back in your world.
I am. I love it. I love everything about Santa Monica. Yeah, it's such a great place to be, in the beach and the ocean. But I loved
Mm.
New York City. So if you're just tuning in, Genevieve was so gracious to host me during my trip recently to New York City and just showed me a great time. Can you imagine bunking up with this woman for a week? How much fun that would be? Well, it was, to put it mildly.
Oh my God, it was an adventure for sure. I'm so glad to
Awesome.
be on with you. This is so fun.
Good. Yeah. So we want to talk about flow state and sex.
Yeah.
So let's define flow state. What does that mean to you?
I was thinking about it actually before we jumped on.
Yeah.
I think flow state is our natural rhythm.
Mm.
And because I watch my son, who's 3, and he's in flow state basically all the time. Like that's
Mm.
his, he's just kind of flowing and doing and creating, and he gets really into the things that he wants to create. And then I think what happens is we get conditioned out of that state. So we start to get awareness of how we should act. We start to get awareness of, the way that things should be. And then the awareness goes into our system. And then we go into this space instead of constriction and not flow, right? So we're thinking, it's like the regular academic, like thought process versus feel, sense, be.
Mm.
Um, and creation from the headspace is a very different sense of creation than creation from the body and from pleasure and from flow. And so I've been pretty geeking out lately about just how beautifully pleasure can bring us to that state of flow and how quickly we can do it. It's a place where, time stops, space stops, nothing matters except nothing.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Feels pretty blissful also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Feels pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about really the difference between creating from the mind and creating from the body, and creating from what I would call like the ultimate creative space, which is in channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's, working with clients and just seeing kind of how I move through my day. I think our biggest job as adults is to just clear the channel, like
Mm.
clear the muck, clear the muck, clear the muck. Go to a place where you are nothing, where you just
Mm.
dissolve, and then from there, everything that's meant to happen, everything that you want, will just naturally flow. Either by you'll get an inkling and a yearning to create something, and then your masculine center will put that into action, or it'll come to you and flow to you in that very kind of feminine structure. So either way, the second
Mm.
we get out of the conditioning, we can start to move into that. And I see so much pushing, and trying to create and pushing. And I used to push like crazy. I was such a good pusher. My God, I could have won all the awards. Just like, working all night long till 4 a.m. and like
Yeah.
just going out and getting what I wanted when I want. Like it was very hyper pushy, and it worked to a degree, but my body started to close down. And my heart started to close down, and my ability to connect started to close down. So I I got to this place in my life, this was like 3-4 years ago, where I, had the kid, I had an amazing partner, I had a 6-figure business, everyone looked up to me, and I was like, is this it? Like, is this all this? Because this doesn't feel that great. Like, what am I missing? I'm not actually that happy. And that's when I started dropping into recognizing, oh, Genevieve, you're pushing all the time.
No more. Huh?
No more.
No more. So if you're watching this, I'm actually noticing that a lot of men are watching right now,
Awesome.
which is not surprising because look who we have with us today. I hear a lot of talk about creating from the feminine versus creating from the masculine and the balance and so forth. And there's a lot of kind of content out in social media around that. Would you liken this idea to that, creating from the feminine?
It kind of. I think in order to be in flow, we have to marry the feminine and masculine inside of us, because anytime we have a polarity or a duality, we're in struggle to a certain extent. If we're too deeply into our feminine, we don't have that masculine to marry it, we're going to be in this like, why isn't anything really happening? Right? And if we're deeply in the masculine, not in the feminine, we'll burn out. So the way I was thinking about it yesterday, I did an interview with Maya Luna, and we talked a little bit about this. And then
I saw that.
Yeah. And then I was thinking yesterday about this, and I was like, it feels like what happens in my body is I'll get the feminine first. Like the feminine will incite something. She'll kind of tease me, and she'll be like, you're supposed to do an event where you have women lying around naked, and it'll appear in my, right? And it's delicious, and my body starts to get really excited, and I can envision myself there, and I kind of sit in that for a while and just let that boil up. And then it feels like what happens is my masculine like takes charge. It's just like, okay, great, we're going to create that now. And that's when I can create containers, I can do timing, I can, but I'm marrying her. I'm honoring her and her wishes and her desires inside of me. And so the two really work together. It's really beautiful to watch, actually. It's fun to watch like how that plays out. So my masculine's pretty strong. So he can get a lot done. And so it's a matter now of marrying the two.
Yeah. I love that. Absolutely. And I love how, like my whole thing is marrying the scientific with the esoteric. And I just love like looking at all these different frames or paradigms that we can put around the same idea. And what's coming into my mind right now, listening to you, is like, we can look at this as masculine, feminine. We can also look at this as hustle and flow.
Yeah.
This is solar, lunar. This is yin, yang. These are the ever pervasive polarities that dominate our nature and, the laws of our universe. And so I want to give our viewers like some really tangible takeaways. Like, how can they actually start to implement more flow through using the technology of pleasure and sex?
Yeah. So the reason that flow is not happening right now is because, like I was getting to at the beginning, your nervous systems are conditioned, right? They're constricted and conditioned. So what that means basically is you're walking through life, and then you have an experience, for example, of a man coming too close to you on the sidewalk, and then your body responds in condition, and you shake it off and you keep going where you're going, so you don't think much of it. But that's a moment when your nervous system gets conditioned. Or as a child, you notice your mother crying and not knowing why and feeling that grief. And there's another moment where your nervous system gets conditioned. So we have all these little moments, and then there's very little that we do on a somatic level to release those so that we can find our full being and the full channel, the full essence. So the tools that I found, which I've adopted and am obsessed with, and I know you're obsessed with too, is using the touch model from the erotic blueprints. These were developed by Jaya, who's a dear friend of both of ours. She's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant.
Yes.
And there's, so basically those of you that are watching, if you think, if one of these resonates with you, or if you're on replay, I'd love to see, Eva and I were talking actually about who we think the majority of her audience is in terms of blueprint. So let's see if we're right.
So far you've been correct. Good one, you nailed it.
So I'd love to see as I go through them if one of them is resonating more with you. Okay, so there's 5 of them, and what this basically means, the way that I frame this, is that there are 5 different types of general nervous systems that of nervous system conditioning that your body needs certain types of touch or energy in order to release. And so they're roughly like 20% of people in each one. So, and these are in no particular order, it's just how I have them memorized. The first one is energetic. And the energetic blueprint, in order for that system to fully release and relax, it needs stillness, it needs anticipation, it needs eye contact, it needs to be allowed to come forward to the partner when they feel ready. And I talk a lot about sexual sovereignty and self-pleasure. So on yourself, on your own body, to get into flow, you want to be really slow with your body if you're an energetic. Like maybe not even touching. When I play with my body energetically, I'm out here and not even close. And I'm breathing and I do meditation and I do yoga. And you'll know when your nervous system as an energetic is too overwhelmed, when you start to feel the desire to flee. like once you're like, I gotta get out of here, that's an energetic response. That's a shadow response of like too much. And so that's when you go and you feed it with meditation or breath, or really gentle touch is really nice, like just on the hairs. And the more you do
Good.
these,
So,
yeah,
we're getting some likes and hearts. So if that sounds good to you, yeah, give us some hearts. Let us know.
and let us know if that's your energetic and what particularly resonates with you. I'm curious. And then there's sensuals. Sensuals, the nervous system of the sensual needs deep grounding touch, needs love. So in a self-pleasure practice, it would be a lot of like loving yourself, coconut oil on your body and like massages and just loving the skin you're in. Also loves the 5 senses. So playing with eating strawberries while you self-pleasure, or playing music with beautiful guitar solos or whatever is going to really give it to you, right? Like feeling and allowing yourself to create a story of love. That's another piece of sensuals that they, right? Like allowing your body to go to that romantic place with yourself. And a sensual will know when they need to drop into more self-pleasure or drop into flow, when they're starting to find themselves too in their head, when they're thinking a lot, right? And they're kind of spinning in their thought process. That's when it's like, okay, take a breath, hands on my knees, hands on my thighs, slow massage, right? And then the sensual can drop in. So if that feels like you, I love touching myself sensually. I just keep, I'm like, I'm not going to stop. If that feels like you.
No, you need to stop. Please don't stop. Show us how it's done, Genevieve.
The other thing about sensuals is we want a lot of time. Like when we're in the sensual nervous system needs a lot of time to like relax. So I'm like, well, why don't we just spend the next hour doing this? Why would we stop? So let me know if you think you're essential. I'm curious if we have sensuals on here. And then there's the kinky nervous system, which the best way that I've understood this, kink is my most, like my home base. I know this one the most. And over the years, what I found is that the kinky nervous system really desires intensity. Right? They want a certain level of intensity through either touch or psychological play. And it tends to veer on the naughty or the taboo side, some sort of secretive, shadowy side. And the touches could be like intense touch, a touch that feels intense, like scratching or pulling or constriction, right? And I'm purposefully demoing things you can do on your own body because I'm a total stand for pleasing yourself always first to get into flow. And then your partner will appear. That's always how it goes. And the thing about kinks, if you're watching and you're feeling like you might be in the kinky category, you're probably experiencing a good amount of shame for wanting to smack yourself, right? Or something like that. And I really just encourage you to let yourself be seen in this kink and know that we love you, and I love you, and Eva loves you, and there's nothing about you that is wrong. It has nothing to do with any like effed upness. It's literally just, this is the way your nervous system needs intensity to release. So like, give it that instead of fighting against it. And then there's the sexuals. Sexuals are super fun. The sexual nervous system needs sex to relax. So they are the ones that literally, if we deny a sexual an orgasm, for example, if they don't have an orgasm a day and their nervous system is sexually blueprinted, they will find themselves getting frustrated very quickly. They will lose energy. They will lose patience. So if you are asexual, please have a daily orgasm practice. You'll probably need daily penetration. So get a delicious dildo or wand or something if you're vulva-bodied. Or if you're with a partner, make sure like that's something that's agreed upon and that you know it's going to happen. The shadow, the place where sexuals can get really kind of stuck is if you may find yourself going really fast because you come from the starved place of needing the orgasm so badly that you're like hyper focused on it. So allow yourself as best you can to know that it is coming. It will happen. Breathe into it. Keep giving yourself orgasms so that the partner, when you're with a partner, it doesn't feel as pressured. And then shapeshifter, shapeshifter is ideally, when I think about shapeshifters, shapeshifter is basically all 5 of these blueprints together in your nervous system, often needed all at once, often desired all at once, and often desired for a very long time. So the way I think of shapeshifters is I think of your nervous system as something that has expanded to hold an awful lot of pleasure, right? Like your pleasure capacity is pretty darn big. And I always say that one of my missions on the planet is for the entire world to become a shapeshifter. Because if you got turned on by every blueprint, if you could relax into every blueprint on your own, there would never be a situation in which you couldn't fully open up to your flow and your essence. You just always be. And I've recently expanded into shapeshifter, and that is now my experience of life, that it's just everything is pleasurable. Everything is flow. I can find it everywhere in my nervous system. And sometimes shapeshifters will find themselves thinking like, I'm too much because I want all of this. Is it okay for me to change my mind so often? Is it okay for me to want all of these things? And I always encourage shapeshifters to just keep playing and keep expanding, and your nervous system over time will be like, yeah, you can have all this. You can totally have it all.
Love it.
So it's through those touch practices, and if you're a shapeshifter, you'd combine all of them, that the nervous system will decondition itself. The body will start to relax. You'll go into more parasympathetic, relaxed states. And it's funny, it's like, yeah, you're in pleasure, but more than anything else, you're in you. You're in being. Right? Which feels way more important to me. So.
I love that. Thank you for that synopsis of the blueprints. And again, if you know your blueprint, go ahead and enter it in a comment and let us know who's watching. So Genevieve has this theory about my audience. Because bring it on.
Yeah. So just looking at you, Eva, and like how you dress, and like look, there's flowers next to you. This is a very sensual blueprinting style. Like it's what sensuals would enjoy and love to look at. The way that her hair is perfectly brushed and there's like her little shoulder peeking through, right? And so I'm curious if your audience is mostly sensuals, and you know, your voice is slower and deeper and that type of thing. I tend to attract a lot of kinky energetics.
That's funny. That's what I am, actually.
Yep. Yep. And then my clients are all either kinky energetic or shapeshifters at this point, which is, it's just funny, but it makes sense. I've got like a purple wall and that's it. Right. And I'm right here, like, here I am. It's a different energy.
It is. Yeah. You bring that like kinky, kink positive, energetic, but also the sexual.
Yeah.
I think you really normalize it. And in my work, I have 3 magic words that I'm always repeating to my clients and in my programs, and that is make nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, make nothing wrong. Radical self-acceptance.
Yeah, it's so, I was just thinking about this earlier. It's so important to me that we recognize that all of these techniques, all of these blueprints are just as sacred as any other ones. I have a picture of myself like tied up with my hands behind my back, and I've been thinking about posting it with the tagline, just as sacred. That there's nothing there. It doesn't matter how you get to the essence of your being. I don't care, right? You could do it by being hogtied and on a floor, or by having tantric sex, or by, if you're sexual, it's just fucking and having orgasms. Like, if that is you, then celebrate it. Right? I feel like for such a long time in my life, especially, I tried so hard to put myself in these sexual boxes of, why don't I like the rose petals in the bathtubs? And I thought something was wrong with me, and that if I'm, you know, I should be feminine and want the rose petals. And like, now I like the rose petals, but I needed to first feed my kinky, which was my dominantly starved one back then. And then once I fed her, then I recognized like, oh, that's just a part of me. And so a lot of us are walking around starving because we're putting ourselves into sexual boxes that we don't need to be in anymore.
Hallelujah. Amen. Amen. So your theory is absolutely true. I tend to attract a lot of sensual and energetic people into my practice, especially women of that composition and their blueprints. And so I want to come back to flow state. Because I want to, so now that we have a synopsis of the blueprints, and we know that every person has their own individual conditioning along with their blueprint, and understanding that sexuality is completely idiosyncratic, meaning we all have our own individual, independent style and relationship to sex and what turns us on, and that also changes over time.
Yes.
It changes inside of a relationship, inside of a partnership. It changes within ourselves, like really on a daily basis. Like, as we have cellular turnover, we also have erotic turnover. I just made that word up. I really like it.
It's really good.
TM. Okay, I'm gonna claim that.
TM that. You can have that one. That was great. I witnessed it happen. See, flow state. This is what I mean. There she goes. She's in it.
Yeah. So I want to like just add on and complement your definition of flow state and like your construct of it, because I think that some of the science can really interweave with this in a beautiful way, and help to add some kind of like a little bit of concretization. How do we concretize flow state, and what are the advantages of being in flow state versus not flow state? And I think, you know, if you're watching this, everyone has had the experience of being in flow and out of flow. When you're off flow, it's like you're off path, you're out of alignment, nothing goes right, everything is frustrating, things don't land, they don't hit, they don't succeed. Yesterday with your guests, you were talking about making posts on social media, and you can tell like when something flows out of you and you share it authentically and organically, that it gets engagement. Versus when you're, you know, kind of mentally constructing something. And And so the world responds differently to you when you create out of flow. And it feels different in the body. There's a sense of pleasure and release and joy. And I would even say ecstasy. It's like an ecstatic release.
Yes.
Versus not being in flow state. Things become mechanical, they become forced, they become challenging or difficult.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, when I'm out of flow, it means to me, it's an indicator that I am disconnected from source energy.
Yeah.
And I can tell it's like I hit every red light. I get a parking ticket. The post office is closed. The person didn't return my call. They didn't get my text. They didn't. It's like there are some like universal forces that are conspiring. It seems like against me. But what it is that I'm just not rooted. I'm not grounded. I'm not aligned.
Yep.
And I'm out of flow. And I know, for me, from what I know about the science of it, my phrase about this is stop, drop, and pleasure.
Yeah.
Like just get into pleasure and you will realign with source energy and that flow state will find you again. So this is another way of looking at it other than masculine, feminine. It's like, there's this meme I saw a year ago or something on Instagram that just summarized it all. It's like, we're all living off of memes now, aren't we?
Yeah.
But it was, align is the new hustle.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think, I don't know, I want to ask your opinion about this, Genevieve, but in my experience, it takes a bit of convincing to get people to wrap their head around this, that you actually don't have to work harder. You just have to have more pleasure with, with what you're doing. And it seems like completely implausible. Like what? Because it is so contra to our patriarchal culture, which is like work your ass off, drain yourself, exhaust yourself, and maybe you'll climb the ladder and make it. And we're turning that on its head, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about this, that the literal hardest part of my job, and my job is very easy, right? As is yours, because we don't do anything but show up, right? It's just like, oh, here I am. Okay, pleasure. Great. The literal hardest part of my job is helping other people believe that it's actually this easy. Like that is the hardest part. And then once the belief is there, it's like the energy starts to just, and then everything's fine. But that single place of belief, I find to be the most challenging place to move someone from a state of disbelief to a state of belief. And it's not anything that I can do. So I just wait, right? Because I can't shift people. I can't wake them up to that.
Well, you can't convince them. This is what I've learned. You can't convince them. They have to experience it on their own. And they have to have the courage to experiment.
Yes.
So, I like to set up these mildly stretching experiments with my clients to say, can you spend 1 hour in a state of pleasure and see what happens? And then just begin to, titrate that up. So
totally.
Spending more and more time and then watch what happens. And I know I would put money on it that you see this in your practice, Genevieve, again and again, just like I do. It's like once they start to really anchor pleasure as a priority in their life and in their business and in their relationship, magic happens.
It's literally ridiculous. It's like I have clients, like just to name a few ridiculous examples. I have a client who signed on with me in February. She's a single mom in Copenhagen. And when she bought my program, she was like, I'm terrified, like financially, right? Like in major financial rut, like so scared. The woman dove in to all the practices. Like she just became that. She in 1 week, she tripled her income. Like in a week, she booked that many clients that she was like, I'm going to pay you in full now. And I was like, okay, like it's that easy, right? People that want to attract, I had someone else that signed up and she was like, I really want to find a life partner.
that's what I get all
You
the
get
time.
that a
Yeah.
lot? Okay. So
Yeah.
I had one of those and I was like, great. Okay. And little, I'm not going to tell her, but like the way to get a life partner is just self-pleasure and then you'll get a life partner.
That's actually
That's basically how it goes.
Newsflash. Here you go. Ladies, we're going to give you a shortcut, okay? Like how to attract your life partner.
Yep.
Yeah, please yourself. That's
Just
the
please
shortcut.
yourself. And after our first call, between our first and second call, so maybe 2 week span, she emails me that she found someone that she's bringing to my event in October. And then 2 weeks later, she was like, I found another one. She's polyamorous and open. So she's like, I have a bajillion. And I was like, of course you do. And she's like, what? And now her problem is like discernment, which is just...
That's a great problem to have.
Right, exactly. And it's just that's the simplicity, right? That's the simplicity of it. I have people that come to me with chronic illnesses, and then in 2 weeks the chronic illnesses are gone, that they've been fighting forever and ever and ever, because flow wants to happen. Like it's natural. I see it, I look at kids teach me about sex constantly. But I look at them and I'm like, they have it, they get it. And then we like stop it. And then we have to relearn it. But it's that place where everything is easy. If you are pushing up against stuff, then you are not in the essence of your being.
Honey, we lost you for a second there. Seems like you're frozen. So I'll just pick up that thought. So Genevieve is driving home for us that if you're pushing. Yeah, so she'll come back in a second. So how can you tell if you're pushing? You can tell that you're pushing by the level of tension in your body. So it means that you're contracted, that you're in muscle armoring, and that you're efforting. And now there are some things in life, I believe, that we do need to effort. Very few times. Sometimes we need to break through a barrier. Sometimes we need to overcome an obstacle and really draw on our resiliency. But that's not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about a basic, fundamental operating system. Here we go. Let's bring you back. You're back. So I started filling in the gaps for you when you disappeared about flow state and how can you tell when you're pushing. And I was talking about tension in the body and how you can tell when you're efforting and when you feel exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
And because we are getting close to the completion of our time here, I want to share a couple of like scientific correlatives.
Please. I love this about you. Please paint me with your science. I'm ready. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just kind of dovetailing on this idea of tension in the body and how can you tell if you're pushing it? It means that you're exhausting yourself. Flow state to me, coming from a neuroscience background, means that you're spending a lot of time in what's called theta state. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there are 4 different basic brainwave patterns, and I won't go into all of that. Like I can geek out on brainwave patterns.
Oh yeah.
The way that you geek out on erotic blueprints. For the sake of time, I won't go there. But suffice to say, so depending on the state of our nervous system, our brain goes into different wave patterns. And for example, delta is one of our brainwave patterns. So it's what happens when you're sleeping. The space between relaxed alertness and deep sleep is a band of wave called theta. And some of you might have heard of theta healing. You know, theta state is a term that's thrown around a lot, but we don't often talk about the benefits of it. And this is the scientific state of flow. So the more time that you spend in that liminal space between sleep and alertness, like deep relaxation, This is a state that you might go into during a meditation. This is the state where you might go into when you're driving on the freeway, not if you're in New York, but if you're in LA. You're driving on the freeway and you just kind of zone out and you miss your exit, you're in theta. Hypnosis. I'm a hypnotherapist as well. So hypnosis is the state we go into. The more time that we spend in theta state, the more nourished our body becomes. Mm-hmm. So when you're in deep relaxation and you're in pleasure, like in that space of arousal just before orgasm. Yeah. So when you're like sort of at that edge, and you know, we call it like the wave-gasm, or like orgasm versus climax, that's theta. Mm-hmm. So when you're in theta state, it literally heals your body. Yes. It repairs tissue. It creates more neuroplasticity in the brain. You learn things more quickly. You heal old stories. You change old beliefs into new beliefs. You're in a state of permeability. Mm-hmm. And it literally nourishes the nervous system. It boosts your immunity. It like does all of these wonderful things for your brain, which mm-hmm. then creates your consciousness, right? And it creates your state of being and your belief system. And so you can do this through self-pleasure. Mm-hmm. You can do this through very embodied, articulate lovemaking. Mm-hmm. You can do this through deep breathing and breath work and meditation. And the more time, so if any of you have a meditation practice, then you know this. The more you meditate, the more quickly you drop in.
Yes.
You know, Genevieve, mm-hmm. Genevieve, I know you have you're very dedicated in your practices. So, yeah. And you know, when you just drop into that floaty, yummy feeling when you're meditating and you're like blissful, you're super blissed out, or maybe after sound bath or something. The more time you spend there, the more you can visit that state all throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. That's when we're the most creative. That's where ideas and inspiration comes in. This is the state that Einstein downloaded, the theory of relativity, like in that liminal waking state. So that's why it's great to meditate or self-pleasure just when you first wake up or right before you go to bed, is because you're going to hit your thetas.
Yeah. And what I like doing with my clients, we're kind of on this mission in New York right now, this Pleasure Tribe mission of New York City too.
Tell us all about it.
What we've been playing in is, what if we can be in that space right before climax all day long, every single day. And that's been happening this week. I've been doing a pleasure challenge with a few hundred people in the Pleasure Tribe. And that's what's happening. And they're like, wait, people are holding doors for me. Wait, all of a sudden I'm getting raises. Wait, all of a sudden, like, so-and-so, my ex-boyfriend called me and wants to get back together, and money is dropping on my door. And because we're in that, it's like we're calling the universe to be a part of our orgasm constantly. It's like the best way I could describe it.
Like a godgasm.
Total. It's a total godgasm. It's a total godgasm. Made that up. She's in flow today, babe. And we can help in that state. We can also help other people be in flow, right? It's this really, like, that's why I love hanging out with you, Eva, because we're just like together and creation happens. It's just the juice of life, right?
Yeah, and that's where we get magnetic. So we talk about like how to attract your life partner, your soulmate, how to attract more money, is that when you're in flow / pleasure, you become magnetic and radiant, and people naturally want to be around you, and like all good things will start to magnetize. Yeah. So you can look at like all the strategy in the world about how to meet a man or how to meet a woman and how to online date and how to and you can look at all of these mechanics. But if you're not in pleasure, if you're not operating from your pleasure body, then you're not going to hit that magnetic radiance.
Yeah. And this is it's in everything, right? So for me, I'm constantly checking in throughout the day. Like, is my body in pleasure? What's going on with, and if there's ever a moment that it's off, I've got, 5 different blueprinting tools based on how my nervous system is feeling to do that quickly and put myself right back in alignment. so that it, you know, it's this, that's the way that I live now. It's like things just, I'll tell you a quick story of this flow because I just think it's so funny. I know we have to end, but this is an example. I was walking my son. He takes a nap like midday every day. And I was walking him on the stroller and I was feeling tense in my body. And so I put on music that turns me on while he was napping. And as I was walking, I just started to really slowly sway my hips to the music. And I was feeling my spine start to align, and I was making love to the flowers in my mind. And, you know, I was like in that, I went into the park and I was like, okay, let me just be in that energy. And then I had this thought. This was right before I left for Costa Rica. And I had this thought, what, I should check to make sure that my passport is where I need it to be because I'm going to Costa Rica in 2 days. So I was like, let me remind myself to do that when I get home. I just had the thought and I didn't hook on it. So I get home and I come inside and I start, he's asleep. So I start doing my self-pleasure practice and the doorbell starts ringing. And I was like, this is so, like, what's going on? And I look outside and it's a man ringing my doorbell. And New York City, you don't answer. So I was like, I'm not going to answer. But he's like aggressively ringing. I'm like, well, if he's aggressively ringing, then I'm definitely not going to answer. So I wait. And then my son wakes up and he wants to go to the playground. So we go outside and I look and there's my passport on top of my mailbox, opened up to my picture page. Apparently it was somehow like in the sidewalk near the trash can.
Wow.
So, and that's just how life should, like, it's just, and I went, oh yeah, of course. Right. Cause daily, I get miracles like that daily, little things where I'm just so held by the universe, because I'm in constant communion with it through pleasure. So.
Amen, sister. So beautiful. So beautiful. So if you're watching this and you want some of that, you know, certainly check out Genevieve, your website, or where could we find you?
My Facebook page is going to be really fun. You can also join the pleasure tribe. We're on day 5. We're on day 5 of the self-pleasure challenge. So if you want to go in and join late, you totally can. It's called the Pleasure Tribe. It's a free 7-day self-pleasure challenge that will get you into flow like within day 2, which is really fun. So you can totally join in that. I'll post the link for it below too, so you can watch and join in. And yeah, just stay in touch, communicate. I'm here.
Let us know what you think in the comments.
Yes.
And certainly if we can answer any questions, we're going to look at this and see how we can support you into flow state through pleasure.
That's the best. Eva, it's so good to see you again.
You too, my love. Mwah, 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 mwah.
I love you too. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.